to an emergency episode of 5-5 Sports. I'm Evan Wimberg. Alongside me is Matthew and Daria, and we're here today to preview incredible wildcard weekend that is for sure going to be full of surprises if week 18 of the NFL season had, or if that was any sort of preview, we are definitely in for a treat going into this weekend and going into the wildcard games. I think we should just go in order. We'll start basically in chronological order of the games being played. So on Saturday, the Saturday afternoon game, Cincinnati versus Vegas. Vegas sneaks in a last second. I didn't sneak in because they would have tied regardless, but they do kind of just get in there. We'll talk maybe a little bit about that Sunday nighter that caused the Chargers to exit. But what do you make of the Raiders' chances? Kind of fighting, clawing. They're on a 4-game win streak going into Cincinnati. Very hot team. Joe Burrow, Jamar Chase. We all know about them, but behind also good O-line and a much improved defense for Cincinnati. How do you see this game going?
I think the Raiders is a team that they're kind of inconsistent as they come because they're a team that I think I've been saying this for like a few years now. Like Derek Carr, he's the type of quarterback that plays up to his competitors, and then he also plays down to them, which means he loses a lot of games that he should be able to win. But now being in playoffs, like you're facing like the most like top tier competition, so naturally it'll be a type of game where we would see the best performance we would come to see from Derek Carr from the Vegas Raiders. That being said, as much as I don't want to say this, I do think that the Bengals will be taking this game because I think that offense has been too much on fire this past season. I think just the chemistry between Joe Burrow and Jamar Chase and just like the other weapons that Joe Burrow had on the team. Like Joe Burrow has been on another level from where he was as a rookie year. He had like a solid rookie year, but he has been kind of playing at like a more elite level this past season. And I don't see him going like much farther in the playoffs, but I don't think Raiders are a team that are going to knock this team down.
Yeah, it's interesting. The Raiders have had a very crazy season with the firing of their coach, and with Ruggs getting cut off the team, and with various other injuries within the team. And they have been, as you mentioned, Matthew, there's been a very inconsistent feel with this team in terms of how they approach games. We saw that they can have games against like they had against Dallas and a few weeks ago, and there is a sudden shift in what do you expect from the Raiders going in. The Bengals, on the other hand, have been incredibly, especially in the second half of the season, have been great. Jamar Chase and of course Joe Burrow have been excellent this season, and they won the division in a sense. So it was very interesting to see this team out of all go and get into this position after how bad they've been recently in recent years. So going into this game, I do agree. I think the Bengals are favorites, but Las Vegas have been a very interesting side this year, and we have to see if that inconsistency comes in. One of the biggest issues with them is on fourth downs. We saw against the Chargers how many times they could have ended that game. They're going into the Bengals into Cincinnati this Saturday, or is it Sunday or Saturday?
Saturday.
They're going into Cincinnati this Saturday, so it should be very interesting. But I do think the Bengals will win this one.
I like what you said there a lot about both the Bengals and the Raiders. What I would say about the Raiders, the best comparison I saw, the best kind of analogy I saw, they're a team of destiny to lose in the first round of the playoffs. And that almost seemed true for Vegas, and I'd almost agree, except for the fact I'm looking at the board. I'm looking for, where's upset going to happen? And, we'll talk about Kansas City and Pittsburgh in a second, and I doubt it's going to happen there. I look at Tampa Bay, Philly, and I don't think it's going to happen there. And I'm looking at Vegas, and I like what they've done defensively. I think they've honestly held their own. I think they have a great secondary, and their D-line, with guys like Max Crosby and Ngakoue. Those guys have been fierce on both ends, and they both create a lot of pressure. So if they could create pressure early on Cincinnati, or if they could get consistent pressure on Joe Burrow and rush him, we'll see him struggle. We saw, especially in his first year behind a much worse O line. It was very difficult for him. And we've seen with, very good D lines, we saw against Pittsburgh earlier this year, we've seen against other teams, when you're able to create pressure. Cincinnati's O line, they're young, they're still developing, but they're not, that upper echelon in the NFL. And we talk about all the time on the show in the NFL how good your O line has to be. Your quarterback needs that time, he needs protection, and Vegas can get if they can get in the backfield, if they can get pressure on Joe Burrow, then I think it's going to be a difficult game for him. What we know about both teams, they could both be down by 20. They could be in a close game. There's going to be a lot of, throws. It's going to be a game heavily contested in the air. If one team's up 20, we know it's going to be both quarterbacks going to be slinging the ball downfield, basically at will. They go for broke every game they play. Derek Carr and Joe Burrow, they love the deep ball. So I expect a high scoring game, but I expect it to come down to the wire because, Joe Burrow, his first playoff game, Derek Carr hasn't been in the playoffs in a couple of years since he last took Vegas. I forget who they lost to years ago, Dyer. Maybe you'd remember, but it's been a while since Derek Carr got into the playoffs. He was last in the playoffs when they were on the Oakland Raiders. So maybe it definitely has been a couple of years, but we're definitely seeing a much more improved Derek Carr. Matthew, I remember talking, in the first 3 weeks of the show, we talked about Vegas, how good they were because, their secondary looked improved. They had the weapons, but you lose Henry Ruggs, John Gruden goes out, and then it looks all doom and gloom. But then you go on a 4-game win streak. You have all these things go for you. Indianapolis loses, helps you get in the playoffs. So I mean, maybe they are a team of destiny to lose in the first round, but I think there's something to give in this game. I think no matter what, it comes down to the final 2 minutes of the game, maybe even the final kick of the game, like we saw Sunday night. That's just how Vegas tends to play all their games. And against a good Cincinnati team, Vegas is good. They'll be competitive. I will give the edge to Vegas on this one, just because I like what I've seen the last few weeks. Both teams are hot. It's not, one team going cold, one team's going hot, and then you're having, that clash. It's two hot teams going up against each other, two great offenses. So I'm expecting a lot of fireworks. I'm expecting, big plays, and I'm expecting, I'm not expecting a conservative game from either side. I'm expecting, gung ho, go for it. It's going to be the opening game to the NFL playoffs, and I think it's going to be a great what's the word? It's going to be a great kind of set for what we see later on in the weekend. So I will go with Vegas. I'll have them edge Cincinnati just because Joe Burrow's first playoff game. I'll give Derek Carr that kind of revenge game, team of destiny kind of thing. Overcome all the adversity. I go Vegas in this one. We move on to the Saturday night game. This game may be even harder to call. Buffalo, New England. Dario, I'll let you start with this one. As a Patriots fan, Mac Jones first time in the playoffs. The Patriots are back after 2 years after missing out last year. How do you assess your chances going into Buffalo? It's going to be a crazy atmosphere. The Bills fans are going to be loud. I was in Buffalo a few weeks ago. Those fans get crazy, but if anyone's going to beat them, it will be Bill Belichick and the Sith Lord kind of going in there to ruin the Buffalo party. Do you see that happening?
I hope it's cold and I hope it's windy over there. And I hope we go with the running game the entire game, just like a few weeks ago. It's a weird one. The Patriots have had a very strange season in which there have been glimmers of a new era in the Belichick with this new team. And Mac Jones has been incredible this season. There's been a lot of games this season where the Patriots have also been a little bit lackluster. We saw against Indianapolis and recently against Miami that this team struggles, especially in the first half of almost nearly all their games recently. And I think it's really due to there's still some, restructuring to be done offensively for this side. I actually don't mind the defensive end. The secondary is great too. I've been very confident in how I've been seeing this Patriots team. Now, going into Buffalo is a difficult one. I really do hope we win this one because them winning the division like this and the way and the thing is we haven't really been playing well recently. We may as a wildcard team and we're going into the Bills. I want to say that, as someone being a little bit biased here, I do want to say that we'll come out and get a win from here. But I don't know. I honestly don't know. The Bills have been kind of hot and cold here in this season, I feel. And because of that, this is to be honest with you, it's actually kind of difficult assessment for this game in particular. There are a lot of issues with both teams. I don't really, as a Patriot fan, I don't expect us to go far in the playoffs, but I do expect us to at least compete in a game against Buffalo out of all teams. And I really do hope we rely on the running game again, because it has been helping quite a bit. It seems like Belichick knows what he wants from his key running backs, and Mac Jones in Buffalo has already had a little bit of a not rough, but I would say Belichick knows what he wants from each game, and he knows that he doesn't need to have Mac Jones have an excellent game in Bill Stadium. So I want to say, as a biased fan, I'm going to say the Patriots do come out with a win, but I do think it's going to be a tight one, and I do hope that it's very windy and it's very cold, and that we can escape once again like we did a few weeks ago.
Sorry, you may have surprised you, but I'm actually agreeing with you. And I do think the Patriots will take this game. And I think if there's any coach who is prepared, because the Bills has a talented team. Like, let's just put out there, they are, and on paper, they are the more talented team than the Patriots. But if there's any coach who can kind of figure out this Buffalo team, it is Bill Belichick. They've been in the same division for years, and Belichick probably knows how this team has developed over the past course of the last few years. But throughout this past season, we've seen Belichick create his own team, rebuild his own team through Mac Jones, and it's ever since losing Tom Brady a couple of years ago. I think Mac Jones, we used to always joke that Tom Brady we always say the joke that Tom Brady isn't the GOAT because he's just a system QB. He just fits into Bill Belichick's system. But in all jokes aside, that's the kind of quarterback that Mac Jones really is. But the system actually works with Bill Belichick. And, we talked about how effective his running game is. And, the weather in January, it can be another windy day. It could be a game that easily they could just run the ball over the Bills. And that'll be a very Bill Belichick way to win the game against the Bills. That'll be a very Bill Belichick playoff type of win. So there's a lot of circumstances that come to play. I think there is definitely a chance that Bills can't take it because the talent is definitely there. But I think defensively, the Patriots have the defensive talent to mitigate that. And Evan, you talk about how you try to look at the board and see if there is an upset that can be seen in these matchups. And I think it will be the Patriots upsetting the Bills because the Bills, I think, generally speaking, are the favorites heading in. But I think the Patriots, just the way that the Patriots team is built to stop a team like the Bills.
I definitely see the argument for the Patriots here. And I mean, I was at the win game where New England just ran the ball on Buffalo, but it'll be a different type of game. Unless the winds were crazy that day, and it'll be cold. It will, the weather will suck, but as long as it's not as windy, they'll be able to throw the ball. You look at different venues. Green Bay, Aaron Rodgers. Sometimes you have to brave the cold. Minnesota. That's the reality of the NFL. So there's just some places where you'll have games like this, and Buffalo. That's what makes it special. That's what makes it unique. I look at both sides, and it's going to be a defensive battle because both offenses honestly are lacking for one reason or the other. The Bills really only have the two weapons. Dawson Knox, good tight end, but he's not explosive or anything. He'll sit in the zones, he'll make good catches. Very good kind of situational player, Dawson Knox, and he's really emerged as that tight end option for Josh Allen. And then Stephon Diggs, he's had a quieter year, but he's still being effective. I worry for the Bills because they don't really have that third, fourth option. They have guys that come in, make plays here and there, but it's not that consistent kind of reliable outlet. And when you look at the Patriots defense, when you have guys like J.C. Jackson, who is going to, lock up Stephon Diggs, or, for the most part, is going to make life difficult for Stephon Diggs, you have to look at other areas, and you have to look at where else you can target Patriots defense. Linebacker, it's going to be hard to run on them on Matthew Judon and Donta Hightower. Dari, you know how good those two are at linebacker for the Patriots. And then you have the experience in Devin McCourty and Adrian Phillips at safety. I'm maybe looking at the one weakness, maybe Jalen Mills on the other side, playing corner. Just brought him from Philadelphia. I never really loved him on the Eagles when the Cowboys played him. It was always area where Dak and the Cowboys often targeted, but injuries have definitely affected you guys there. So we'll see how he fills in. But those are the matchups that are going to define this game. I look at the Bills defense. I look at absolute superstars. Micah Hyde, Tre'Davious White, Jordan Poyer, Matt Milano, Traymon Edmonds, Jerry Hughes. I like their pass rush more. When you add Ed Oliver to that, when you add guys like Star Lotulelei, I look at this game, and it's going to be hard for both teams to run because of how good both teams are against the run. We know Bill Belichick's made a living stopping the run, but We know it's going to be hard for the Patriots to run on that Buffalo Bills defense. And we know Bill Belichick likes to establish the run. We know Mac Jones' first ever playoff game is going to be cold. You know, he'll maybe have some nerves, he'll have some jitters. So going into Buffalo in that atmosphere, you want to establish a decent passing game, but the Bills are going to make that difficult. I just see the Bills winning because I don't know if Mac Jones is going to get it going. I think there's more jeopardy against the Bills to come out and play flat. I think the Bills are going to be ready. I think they're going to be playing a high octane game. And if the Bills can jump out to an early lead, Patriots have to be wary because I think the Bills are going to try to force the Patriots to play a way that they're not comfortable with. And in Buffalo, a rookie's first game, I just think this is a matchup where Buffalo kind of reestablish themselves as those Super Bowl contenders that we're all calling them after they played the Chiefs early on, I think in week 3 or 4. And they've definitely had their ups and downs. They've had their injuries. They've had their struggles, the Bills. But, you know, they've kind of regrouped. They've got it back together. And I think it will be a close game just because division game. It's almost inevitable in the NFL when you have a division rivalry coming down in the playoffs, especially when they had that battle, you know, going all the way to the end of the regular season, fighting for first place in that division. Buffalo gets home field advantage. They earned it. And I think their experience and Josh Allen's maybe level-headedness will emerge as kind of the defining factor in this game.
One thing I disagree with you is I understand what you're saying, and I agree with a lot of what you're saying. But then you're saying it's like if it gets to a high octane game, but knowing the Patriots this season, there's a lot of chance it won't become that kind of game.
Mm-hmm. I think the Bills keep it, I think the Patriots keep it close. I just think it's inevitable it's low scoring, but if the Bills kind of get on a roll and they maybe put, you know, 2 or 3 scores together in the first half, then I think the Patriots are kind of looking at a different ballgame where they have to play kind of against, you know, what they're used to. But I don't think it's going to happen. I think the Patriots do keep it close. I think the first half's incredibly low scoring, if history has anything to show for it. And then you go into the second half where it's tight, it's closely contested. I still give the edge to Buffalo, Josh Allen, just because, you know, they've been there, they have a little more experience, they're at home, and they are well coached. You look at the job that Sean McDermott's done, you know, he's as, you know, good as any coach in the league. So, you know, it's not really a factor that Bill Belichick's going to outcoach, you know, his opponents on Saturday. I just think it's close. I just think the Patriots offense has, you know, just as many weapons as Buffalo, which isn't, you know, many. You know, I think they have a better run game, the Patriots do, but Buffalo definitely has the answer to that. They have a great D-line and they have great linebackers that understand how to play against the run. And then you just look at the passing options. It's not as good. It's not as consistent as maybe Buffalo's passing game is. You look at Jacoby Myers. You look at, you know, I don't know why N'Keal Harry's coming to my mind, but I mean, I know he's I think Kendrick Bourne, that's what I'm thinking of, you know, and they've definitely emerged as, you know, better players and as weapons for Mac Jones. But I think Buffalo's defense is so good and they will have answers for Patriots. I just think it's low scoring. I think they'll be limited, both teams on offense. I just think the Bills, because of their experience, because of their pedigree, have the edge in this game. But I think it comes down again to the final, you know, few minutes of this game. It just feels inevitable.
Dart, any last words for your Patriots?
Honestly, I do see where you're coming from, though, Evan. I do see what you mean. I am, to be honest with you, I am worried about our options offensively. I know I've loved Kendrick Bourne this season. I've loved a lot Jacoby Myers. You know, there's been Hunter Henry as well. There's been some great options for this Patriots team. As I said, though, one of the things is I don't think this team is ready for going forward as much as, even though I'm saying we're going to win, I do think we're going to win this game. I'm not overly confident about saying that. That's why I'm very hesitant to say what exactly the score is. I do think we were right, though. I think it's going to be coming down to the last few minutes in this one. And I actually do think it's going to be low scoring as well. But I think for that very reason, the Patriots are going to come away with it, because I think that's actually been during the season, that's when they've been the best, is when
that's the way they win the games.
Yeah,
it's the way they win their games. And I think that was proven last time when they actually played Buffalo in the Bill Stadium. So I think this will just be another repeat of that, to be honest with you.
Moving on to the Sunday games. This one may be a little more one-sided from our point of view, but you never know with the Eagles playing up fairly well over the last maybe month and a half. Some good wins over the Saints, over Washington twice, but they're going up against a different animal in Tom Brady and the Buccaneers. They are heavily favored. They are heavily favored. Tampa Bay is. How do you see this game going? No Antonio Brown, of course, but still plenty of weapons for Tom Brady to utilize.
Yeah, I don't know. Maybe you guys want to view this game, but I really am thinking that we're all agreeing that Bucks are taking this game. The Eagles, they had a good season. Jalen Hurts has played well, and like the offense as a whole, a lot of the young receivers, they've been kind of like stepping up a lot, and just I could honestly, the Eagles have had an impressive season. Always consider where they were a season ago. That being said, I think it's one of those cases where they just ended up in the playoffs more than they earned being like one of the top tier teams in the league. And I think like if you look at all the teams around that missed the playoffs, they're kind of in that similar like subpar team level. Like I'm thinking of teams like New Orleans, like they had a lot of quarterback issues, although they had a good defense, and of course they have Alvin Kamara. They themselves, they are a solid team that had a lot of problems. I see the same thing in the Eagles. The Eagles are far from an elite team, and I don't think going up against Tampa Bay, which has always been strong both offensively and defensively. I see this one as a real mismatch, in my opinion.
Yeah, I agree completely. I honestly, when I was looking at even the bracket or seeing what was in the NFC playoffs, I think Philadelphia is the worst team in this current wild card, if not Pittsburgh, to be honest with you. But that's not really saying much. I honestly can't see this going any other way. I think Philadelphia are kind of lucky to be here, if I'm very honest with you. I think they've played well recently, but I think as an overall team, they have not been impressive this season. There hasn't been much to really look at when it comes to this Eagles team. And the only thing I'll give it to them is that this Tampa Bay team is not the same as it was last season, in which that there has been some, I want to say, controversy or some things happening off the field that cause problems, and specifically this Antonio Brown thing. I know obviously they've dealt with that.
I believe the Antonio Brown thing happened on the field.
You're right.
We'll talk about Antonio Brown after we kind of finish this.
But you're right. You're right about that. You're right about that. Whether it's on the field or off the field, in this case, it was more so he, causing problems within obviously the camp for the Bucks. That being said, though, as Matthew said, like there's a lot. They have a lot of offensive options there, and Tampa Bay are the favorites. They're at home. I can't really see this going any other way.
I think we're kind of discrediting Philadelphia a little bit, calling them, are lucky to be in the playoffs. I mean, look, there's 7 teams, and when you look at the rest of the NFC, they are the best of the rest. So I don't think it's necessarily luck. I just think it's kind of good fortune, maybe is a better word to describe the Eagles being in the playoffs. And look, they have a good team, and credit to like head coach Nick Sirianni, rookie head coach, getting his team in the playoffs. Jalen Hurts, there are a lot of question marks on him going into preseason, going into the season, but he's answered a lot of the critics. And I'd say where the true weakness lies for Philadelphia is at wide receiver. Minus maybe Devonta Smith, who's still learning, his craft. He's still kind of understanding in the game. He's only going to get better. Really, the sky's the limit for Devonta Smith. But I mean, I look at their other weapons, and that's where they're lacking. At running back, they lost Miles Sanders early on, so not having that option in the run game, and then really the other, the rest of the receiving core just isn't it. Maybe Dallas Goedert tight end. He extends plays, he gets you first downs, but other than that, they're going to struggle. But Philadelphia, they have a good defense, good O-line, good D-line, and Jalen Hurts has time, and he's been protected for the most part of this season, and he's able to scramble. He makes plays with his legs. We've seen this new age of running quarterbacks with Lamar, with Kyler Murray, among a host of other quarterbacks. So I think Jalen Hurts is definitely kind of adapting, and he's definitely learning his craft in the NFL. But you just look at Tom Brady, and you look at the pedigree, and you look at how many wins he gets, whether it's a blowout win, whether it's a close game in the fourth quarter, this guy just wins. And, they definitely have the better team, the Buccaneers. But I think, when they played Washington, the football team last year, and Taylor Heineke kind of gave them a ride. Look, that was a talented Washington team, and Jalen Smith has some talent, and they've been playing a lot better offensively, and they'll put up points against Tampa Bay, a little bit more of a banged up Buccaneers team than we maybe saw last year when they went on the Super Bowl run. So I think Philadelphia keeps it close, at least for the first half, probably at least the first 3 quarters, and then if they're, within 7, if they're within maybe even 10 or maybe even less, maybe they're leading after 3 quarters, we're really looking at an interesting game. I don't think it's going to be like Pittsburgh, Kansas City, where it's going to be a blowout. I think this is the game that Philadelphia keeps close, to keep tight. They've been playing well and they kind of have some momentum on their side, and they'll have the belief, they'll have that, spirit where, they're the underdog, and, they can go for broke. The pressure's not on them. Pressure's on Tampa Bay to win, to move on, and to advance on the Super Bowl quest. They have all the talent. They've spent all the money, and they have all the championship expectations. So you look at Philadelphia, I expect them to play freely. I expect them to play with, an edge and a kind of that extra desire that, most underdogs play with, and they have the talent. So it really comes up to Jalen Hurts. Can he make his throws? Can he step up to the pressure? And can he keep them, within maybe a possession or two going into the fourth quarter of this game? Again, Tampa Bay, you expect them to win. It'd be shocking if they didn't, but I'm not going to discount Philadelphia and, throw them under the bus. I've seen them a few times, against Dallas, against some other teams this season. They're competitive and they struggled early on, but they've kind of found their groove late on. So it will be a test for Tampa Bay, but it's almost the perfect test for the Buccaneers, because not the best opponent, but it's definitely, not the worst, where it'll get them ready for, the upcoming playoffs if they do advance past the Eagles.
That's a fair point, and I do see what you mean. Like, the Eagles definitely do have things going for them, and but that being said, first time Jalen Hurts, like, he's a young quarterback, his first time in the playoffs. Kind of what you were saying about Mac Jones, like, he's going to be tested, but I feel like, unlike,
I think it's a different pressure that you have, going up against a division opponent where, the expectations are definitely higher for the Patriots than they are for the Eagles. When you look at, the way betting goes, and the way Vegas kind of looks at, and the way, NFL fans kind of view the game. We view Tom Brady, he's that upper echelon of just winner. He's a winner, and it'll be a test for Philadelphia, but we've seen teams in the past go into that underdog mentality with that hunger in any sport, whether it's basketball, whether it's soccer, whether it's hockey. You look at the Canadiens Leafs last year. The Canadiens had talent, but no one expected them to beat the Leafs. But they grinded out a series, and they made life difficult. And in sports, those fine margins are defined by some tight games are defined by those fine margins. And if Philadelphia can maybe get a pick six, a fumble, football's a funny game. And if Philadelphia keeps their heads in it, if they play hard and they kind of keep Tampa Bay off the scoreboard early, if they can frustrate them, then we're looking at definitely a test going forward for the Buccaneers.
Sure.
Moving on to the Sunday afternoon game where the Cowboys play the 49ers. Definitely a game where anything can happen. There's definitely a lot of history between the teams, definitely some playoff history, but that's more, in the past, and this is kind of a new age for both teams. And it'll definitely be a test for Dallas. So going in as the favorites, as the NFC East division winners. West San Francisco has been playing well. They're hot. They came off a big win. Who did they beat on a Sunday? Arizona. Right? It was Niners Arizona this weekend, right? Or am I thinking of no? Arizona played Seattle. Sorry, the Niners played the Rams. Yes, pardon me. So look, the Niners are a good team, well coached again. Kyle Shanahan, one of those top coaches, one of those brilliant offensive minds. Deebo Samuel, basically playing every position for the 49ers, but they definitely have an issue at quarterback when Deebo Samuel doesn't play. Sometimes you have Garoppolo. It's been mostly Garoppolo, and he will definitely be the starter, but they're definitely not sold on him, as Trey Lance has been kind of, there's been talks about Trey Lance starting next year and trading Jimmy Garoppolo. So how does it affect the 49ers, and will that affect Jimmy Garoppolo's play going into that game against Dallas, who definitely have one of the better defenses in the league?
Well, I think that kind of just sums up. You're going with a quarterback who the team's not so on against, like we just said, one of the better defenses. Because all jokes on the Cowboys aside, they've had a great season this year. They've had a great defense, and I think just looking at the defense alone, that is enough to contain the 49ers. And the 49ers is a great team, don't get me wrong. They have great offense and great defense, and I expect this to be a close game. But when you're playing it by just comparing the two teams, you just give talent-wise the edge to the Dallas Cowboys. Dallas Cowboys. I'm not a fan of this team. I'm not a fan of the coaching. I'm not a fan of Mike McCarthy and how he handles the team. But it's one like the Cowboys are one of those teams where talent has been kind of enough this season, and will it take him to the Super Bowl? Not in my opinion, but against a team like the 49ers that has some struggles of their own, that doesn't have a quarterback that they're completely sold on, that has to go against games, throw around to players that are being guarded by like Trayvon Diggs. I think and like who's the other guy on the Cowboys who's the rookie? I'm thinking his name.
Yeah, Micah Parsons.
Micah Parsons.
Yeah.
These players on the Cowboys, it's going to be a challenge for this 49ers offense. And I think Deebo Samuel's side, I think, Deebo Samuel, like you said, he could really play every position for the 49ers. But I just don't think it's enough for his offense to kind of take this game.
Yeah, it has been a season of really, as you said, about this talented Dallas team coming out of games and looking as impressive as they have. They had, they've had some really high scoring games in the past, especially, I'm always thinking about that game against the Patriots early on in the season. And of course, the game against Oakland that they had, they've had Dak and, Elliott and as well as their various other options really stand up for them in a great time. And while I'm kind of with Matthew on this, I'm not a huge fan of Mike McCarthy. I think they've done enough this season to be warranted as a genuine favorite or sorts at least to go compete onwards for to get to the Super Bowl. But we'll have to see on that. It's more a focus on the 49ers now. And I think this game is really dictated on how is Jimmy Garoppolo going to come into this? He's been struggling with his I believe it's his thumb issue, so he's been out. And surprisingly, this 49ers team has managed to stay adrift since he's had these issues. And with their backup QB, and as you mentioned, he might even be starting next season, which is quite impressive. But in terms of that, though, I don't know. I think Dallas has enough quality to kind of come out of this, and just generally being a superior team, I do think they can come away with this quite easily. It does depend on, of course, I do think Jimmy Garoppolo is a factor. And, as much as they have been impressive as staying adrift this season, I don't think it'll be enough in this game particularly. And because of that, I do think Dallas will easily come away from this.
I don't think easily, because nothing ever comes easily for Dallas Cowboys, especially in the playoffs. You can look at recent history, Green Bay twice. Green Bay twice. Those are really the two killers. The Rams a couple of years ago. So recent history definitely isn't going to dictate how this game goes, because it's definitely a different Cowboys team. The theme always for the Cowboys in recent years in playoff history was a bad defense, but their defense is much improved. And I think we talked a lot about Trayvon Diggs, Matthew, in this year just on this podcast, and I think we've overrated him a little bit, because we look at the yards he gives up, and he's a great ball hawk, but I think he's still learning. He has to learn, the craft and the trade of playing corner, and really, not letting guys get separation. He tries to obviously maybe get too many picks almost, if that makes any sense. And then he'll maybe misread something, or he'll misread a double move and get beat. But he does have excellent recovery speed. He definitely has good footwork, and we know that Trayvon Diggs is one of the better corners in this league. He just has to, improve, playing one-on-one against guys. And he'll be going up against a guy like Deebo Samuel, who has a lot of speed, he has a lot of tricks, and he, incredibly technical player. And that's a guy you don't want to play, and it's a guy you don't want to play against in any scenario. And we know he'll get his yards. And so I think it's a little far-fetched to say that's going to be easy for Dallas, because we've seen, the inconsistencies in Dallas, whether it's 1 week they'll be good offensively, bad defensively, or 1 week they'll be great defensively, and they'll struggle offensively. So I think that comes down to coaching. I do worry about the coaching matchup, because I think Kyle Shanahan's a lot smarter and a lot kind of sharper than Mike McCarthy is. So I think, in late game situations, who's going to have that edge. We've seen Mike McCarthy make so many, gaffes, with timeouts, clock management, with, situational football that I'd say at least, the other 75% of the NFL doesn't have that problem, because they have coaches that understand and are confident enough to, make big calls in the right moments. Even the best head coaches make mistakes. We saw Staley and the Chargers kind of make a mental mistake or try to outsmart himself by calling that timeout against the Raiders, which really made the Raiders kind of push for that late field goal. So when a game between two really good teams, if it comes down to the final 2 minutes, I do worry about Dallas, and I do worry about that situational football. other than that, defensively, look, we know their defensive line is going to give them problems. They have the best defensive line in football. So it really comes down to the Cowboys O line. Can they protect Dak Prescott? Can they give him enough time to make throws, pardon me, to find guys like CeeDee Lamb, to find Amari Cooper? Can they establish the two-headed monster that we saw work so well for them? Tony Pollard's going to come back. It's going to be huge for the Cowboys because they definitely missed him. Zeke definitely struggled without him, and I think we've seen Tony Pollard this season establish himself as the RB1 for Dallas, despite, what, people want to say about Zeke, and, maybe despite what the contract and money says, Tony Pollard is definitely the more impactful running back on the Cowboys. So it's going to come down to the Cowboys offense, because we know defensively, they're not going to shut out San Francisco. San Francisco will get their points, and, they'll score enough points to keep it interesting. So it's about Dallas. It's about, defensive clutchness. It's about situational football. And if they do all the right things, then they should win this game because they have more talent and they are the better team.
I think you said it all.
Yeah.
I definitely agree with you too. For the most part, we both agree that the Cowboys are picked to win. I did agree with you that 49ers, they're definitely not a bad team. They are a great team, and they have definitely a playoff worthy team. For me, it's just, I think honestly, just the idea of Jimmy Garoppolo being a starting QB is one of the things that makes it, because having an elite quarterback makes all the difference in playoffs. Yeah. Elite quarterback with elite receivers and elite targets, and he does have Deebo Samuel, but I think Jimmy Garoppolo alone is what makes me throw off the 49ers just a little bit, because as a quarterback, Garoppolo is kind of he's as mediocre as they come. Let's be fair. He's not a bad quarterback by a stretch, but he is a serviceable QB. But against
wait, I thought he was supposed to replace Tom Brady though, as a New England future.
Look, if he developed under Belichick for the amount of times that Brady has, you never know, because having Belichick as their coach for many years, that makes all the difference in the world. But what we see from Jimmy Garoppolo up to now, he isn't the second Tom Brady that some people thought he would be.
You guys have to have your digs in there with the Patriots here. Oh my god!
Oh, it's Jimmy Garoppolo. He's in San Francisco. You have Mac Jones in the playoffs. I don't think it's too much of a dig, rather than a lighthearted joke towards Gucci Garoppolo. But
of course,
yes. Moving on to what appears to be the one blowout game of the weekend. You never know in the NFL. Matthew, Dar, I think you know what I'm gonna say. Pittsburgh versus Kansas City. It's going to be probably Big Ben's final game in the NFL. Do they stand a chance? Do they have a prayer? Maybe, maybe they could say something to a God out there that maybe he's on their side. I don't know. How do you see this going?
One positive takeaway for me for Raiders not tying it and taking it is that instead of Big Ben's last game being a win against the Ravens, it will be a devastating loss against the Chiefs. I couldn't be happier to see him get an embarrassing send-off from the league. One more can say, we could have gotten Justin Herbert throwing 4th and 20-yard missiles in the fourth quarter, but no, we're gonna have to see Big Ben throw hamburger helpers at his receivers. The offense isn't great, I think the Steelers and I'm biased for fans, so just take my words as a grain of salt, if you will. But I think the Steelers, a lot of the players that get a lot of attention, I think are very overhyped. I think someone like Chase Claypool is a very overrated receiver. I think he goes on his TikTok videos, he's heavy on social media, and that kind of gives him the attention. But I don't think he is by any means an elite receiver. I think he's just the best option that Steelers has at the moment, because Juju's out and then they don't really have that many targets. And he is a receiver that would connect well with the way Big Ben has to play these days. I think the best thing the Steelers have going for him is the defense, which will come to play because that Kansas City's offense is their biggest threat. But I think Kansas City's offense is a little too good to stop, especially in the more recent second half of the season. We had their concerns with the Chiefs early in the year, especially with their own defense. But I think they've kind of overcame that in the recent weeks. And I think this is going to be a blow win for the Chiefs.
I agree on the blow win for the Chiefs. I do have to step in and say I've disagreed with one thing you said there about Chase Claypool. I think all the Patriots receivers or not the Patriots, Steelers receivers are underrated, because if you watched Big Ben throw the football at all this year, You saw how much of a struggle it was for him to throw over 15 yards in the air consistently and basically on target. So I think all the Pittsburgh Steelers receivers are underrated. I think Chase Claypool, he definitely has some things to work on, like his hands. There's been a few drops. It's been predominantly, kind of he's made his trade, 1-on-1. These go routes, these catches in the end zone where he's kind of going 1-on-1 against some guys. But Deontay Johnson's been a threat all year out of the slot. Najee Harris has been a huge threat. He's been a weapon for the Steelers, basically being forced to run the ball consistently. He'll chug
forgot
out
about Najee
6
Harris.
7
I
yards.
do think Najee Harris is
Yeah.
a great player on the Steelers. I'll,
So-
I'll give Najee Harris, and Deontay Johnson is underrated. I'll give it to these two actually.
Yeah.
Credit to.
So basically everyone on the Steelers is underrated except for Big Ben, who basically is just, Peyton Manning, 6-7 years ago when they when they won their chip over Carolina, when he was just basically, an arm, because he had no spine left, he had no legs, he couldn't run. He just basically got the ball, sat in the pocket and threw. And that's basically what Big Ben is at this point. So credit to all the Pittsburgh Steelers receivers for getting them in the playoffs. Credit to that defense. That's a big shout out to TJ Watt. Breaking I think he broke the single season sack record, right? I saw he tied Strahan, and I'm pretty sure he beat him moments after. So credit to TJ Watt for getting that done. But yeah, if the Chiefs do anything other than win this game by 25 points, it would be probably a massive disappointment from a Chiefs point of view. It's just I've watched Big Ben play football this year. It's been hard, and the fact that they're in the playoffs is just credit to basically Mike Tomlin too. Sorry, I have to shout out Mike Tomlin.
Yeah.
Has not gone one season without a winning record, or at least a 500 record in the NFL. That includes having to coach players like Antonio Brown, Le'Veon Bell, Big Ben. The list goes on of characters that he's had to
Issues
coach.
Steelers aside, I agree. I gotta respect
Yeah.
Mike Tomlin as a head coach. He's there's a reason why he's one of the longest tenured coaches in the league.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and long may continue for the Pittsburgh Steelers. Let's move on to what may be the best game.
Hey,
of...
sorry.
I see how it is.
No? Oh, sorry. Yes. Sorry, I took his turn. So Daria,
It's all good. It's all good. Sorry, let me just recompose.
final words on on the Steelers' funeral on Sunday night.
Because
You-
Daria
you
were
know-
black,
Honestly, I think the Raven fan here is going to really enjoy this game. I think it's going to be a complete blowout. Honestly, like you guys said, I don't really know how Pittsburgh is in the playoffs right now. The one thing I will give credit to is say what you want about Big Ben. He's had something of a career going forward, and if this is the last game he's going to lose, I mean, I know a lot, especially you, Matthew, you'll enjoy this one. But he's had it. Yeah, you have to give credit. He's had an outstanding career throughout like the decades. The decade he has been.
He's one of the best QBs of the 2000s. I think that's
100%.
just like the late 2000s, early 2010s. He has been one of the most dominant QBs. Like after Brady and Manning and Rodgers, and he's in there like
100%. And if I were to give anything to this team, is I do think, like as you mentioned, Deontay Johnson has been very underrated this season. I think he's been great when he's been called upon. I think. Honestly, I wish Claypool was not the number one, because I think he should be number one.
I agree with that statement.
I don't understand why they keep going with Claypool consistently. Maybe they could change it up in this game. I do think that he could become a very big factor. But at the end of the day, it's Kansas City in Arrowhead. I don't see any real chance of Pittsburgh coming away with this one. I'll be shocked if it happens. If anything, it'll be like a fairy tale story for Big Ben. For I guess the rest of the league, I don't see any chance really for Pittsburgh to come away with a win against City.
Okay, finally, what appears to be the best game of the weekend happens to go on Monday night, but division rivalry, Rams Cardinals. What happens in this game?
I really like the Cardinals because I think I mentioned this a few times. Like one of my favorite players to watch outside the Ravens is Kyler Murray. I like the way he plays quarterback, very similar to Lamar. So I enjoy watching him play. Of course, he's Korean, so I'm gonna just say he's the closest thing I'll ever see to a Korean quarterback. And he's just the talent is there for Kyler Murray. I think he's going to have a successful career in the NFL. I think we'll only see him grow to be in the playoffs more frequently for years to come. That being said, I think this is the Rams game to win because I think, we saw like in the middle of the season where the Rams dipped off a little bit, and we kind of like early in the season. If you remember, I picked the Rams as my favorites to win it all. Later in the halfway point, we kind of after Robert Woods got injured. I think again, I said Blossom on Spirit Live. The value Robert Woods brings to the Rams, it's very underrated. Not only is he a great second option as a wide receiver, that could have been the first option if Cooper Kupp wasn't the first option. He is also one of the best blocking wide receivers in the NFL. And the ability he brings as a blocker is what allows like Matt Stafford to be to be able to throw it to the opponent. That gives Stafford time, allows the running game to be as effective as it is.
That's absolutely true. Yep.
And I think losing that it definitely mitigated their chances of being the Super Bowl favorites. I think. With that being said, the talent on the Rams is still there, both offensively and defensively. Aaron Donald is the best defensive player in the league, has been for quite a while now. And you could give or take if you can maybe join players like T.J. Watt in there, but I think Aaron Donald will always be in that conversation. You have Von Miller, who is definitely much older than Von Miller that we once knew. He's not the exact same Von Miller, but he's still effective. He can still not being the number one guy on that defense is kind of how he helps him. And I think he's adjusted since like the first few weeks of being on the Rams. And of course, Jalen Ramsey in the corner. And offensively, even Robert Woods, again, him not being there is a loss, but you still have a lot of weapons on a team for Stafford, and you have a strong running game. I think Cardinals, they have great, threat with Kyler, and they have like a solid running game with James Conner and Chase Edmonds. Although James Conner might be injured, I believe, but you can fact check me on that. But I do think overall talent-wise, it's a little outmatched to what the Rams have built this season.
Yeah, the Rams definitely went all in, but I look at these two teams, two great coaches, two great offenses, two great defenses. So it comes down to Matthew Stafford and Kyler Murray. And despite Kyler Murray being the younger quarterback, I definitely think under pressure, he falls less than Matthew Stafford. And it's because we have more of a sample size for Stafford. But with Kyler Murray, it's just excitement, the arm strength as well as the running ability kind of gives him the edge for me over Matthew Stafford, just because of what I've seen from a consistency point of view from Stafford. Look, I think Arizona's going to win this game, despite the Rams going all in this year and previous years. I just think offensively, the Rams can keep up, the Cardinals keep up with the Rams if the Rams end up, scoring early and often. And I like the Cardinals here. I give them the edge, and this is the game where it could be decided by, the slimmest of margins, but I do give the edge to the Rams. It's a gut feeling, both great teams. We've seen them battle twice already. I give the edge to the Cardinals. Something about them. I like them. I like them in this game.
It's fair. It's gonna be a great game regardless. Well, sorry, you go.
Yeah, no, I was just gonna say, can I just say it's awesome that this is a Monday nighter? I mean, that's going to be so much fun. Both teams have been very exciting this season. I love the way Kyler Murray has been playing for Arizona. Well, I don't think the second half of the season has been particularly his best, or at least the team's best. I think that they've warranted enough to kind of be in the position that they are. And, this Rams team has been also impressive with Stafford. And, my fantasy football player of the year, the one that won me a championship this year in Cooper Kupp, has been incredible this season, all things considered. And it's been great to see that this offense of the Rams finally showing up when it matters. In the terms of who's going to win this game, it's honestly really tough. It's a really tight one, and I want to edge it because I was saying from the beginning of the season, I think the Rams can go all the way to Super Bowl. I don't know if they can still, with Robert Woods being injured as well. I think not having experienced player like him is going to be difficult, but I have a small feeling that the Rams are going to come away with a win against Arizona. But I do think it's going to be really tight, and I do think it's going to be a great game.
Your fantasy team dodged a bullet, not facing me. You facing rounds instead of me. Just saying, it just happened to throw out there.
Championship to championship, buddy.
So, you know what, Troy? You got to be in the finals to win the final. So credit to Daria for winning our league. It must be said. We have to shout him out. Quickly, before we go, there is one thing we have to talk about, and it is Antonio Brown. And I mean, we have to talk about it because it's such an I think we all, at first, when we saw it on TV live, I think we're all watching it on a Red Zone. I think our first initial reaction was like, this is a commercial or something. It didn't feel real. And now we have the whole fact, Antonio Brown's had his side. We've heard from Bruce Arians and the Buccaneers side. What do you make this whole situation? Who's in the right, who's in the wrong? Does Antonio Brown have a leg to stand on to maybe say his actions were justified?
Look, I'll say this. I do think that there's more to it than him just just quitting on team. Like I can understand that maybe there was some, obviously with his very lopsided story, there was probably some truth in the whole injury thing, the whole Bruce Arians, the disagreement with Bruce Arians. That being said, Antonio Brown, it's like when Antonio Brown has a small case of being justified, he handled it in the most unprofessional way possible. And knowing Antonio Brown's history, no one's gonna look at this and say, and I include to say that Antonio Brown's completely in the right because even if he has some part of it in the right, he handled it in the worst way possible, and like he tend to handle most things recently in the worst way possible.
The problem is, I think Antonio's rent ego is a way too inflated. I was watching him on his interview on the Full Send podcast that he did the day after, and
With a moment of silence for the greatest wide receiver of all time, Antonio Brown.
I was gonna say, I mean, like your ego just has to be so inflated. And the what he was saying, he's the best receiver on the team. It's like on the Jets. You have Mike Evans and Chris Godwin on that team as well. They also have Gronkowski. They also have a great running back, Leonard Fournette. I don't know what he's talking about. Like he's so far like head and shoulders above the rest of that team. Tom Brady's entire career has eclipsed his accomplishments. I mean, look, he had a great NFL career. I mean, we're not talking about a scrub here. We're talking about an elite NFL receiver.
In terms of the best wide receiver I've ever seen, if you ask
he's up there. Look, he is.
I'll personally say Antonio Brown. Maybe because I watched a lot of Ravens games, I watched him torment for many years. I was honestly Antonio Brown is not the greatest wide receiver of all time, but he's the best, most talented wide receiver I've ever seen. So there's no question on his legacy as a player, but
yeah, there's no questioning his legacy, but there's questioning his attitude, and I mean his attitude does affect his legacy because we look at high octane personalities. We can look at guys like Terrell Owens, Chad Ochocinco, and they definitely had their fair share of kind of moments with the media on the field, but I mean to walk off the field, especially on a championship contending team when you are the favorites, you're Tampa Bay, and Antonio Brown was meant to play a big part of that. And he was probably going to be one of those pieces that separated the Buccaneers from the rest of the teams. I get you're injured, but to basically throw your NFL career, I mean, does he need the money anymore? No. Does he need to play? But just it's about showing respect for the league, for your team, for your teammates, for the guys that you battle with. All those guys are, he's not the only one playing injured. I mean, if he was injured, he shouldn't have played the game to begin with. He should have said, his foot did look, pretty, swollen and beaten up, but there has to be a certain level of respect, a certain level of kind of dignity that you have, you make the NFL, you've had a great career. There's a moment in place, and obviously the conversation of CTE, head injury, where is he mentally? Because we saw this instance, with the Raiders, on the field, off the field, with some doctors, farting, in their face. And so it's just very weird antics from Antonio Brown, and it becomes more of a mental thing rather than an entertainment or kind of a sports thing. It becomes an Antonio Brown thing, and we do have to worry about, I guess, his mental health. Not us personally because we don't know him, but people that are close to him, people that know him very well, it's definitely time for them to look after him and make sure he doesn't go off the rails and doesn't do anything too crazy over the next few years, because that's definitely an incident that people aren't going to forget, and that's definitely something that he will be remembered for, and that's something that will end up possibly defining him in the next 10-15 years when we look at his career, when we talk about the Hall of Fame. So it's a sad way to go out. I don't justify his actions. Was it entertaining? Yes. I mean, that's something that made me go on Twitter, make me, look at the whole story, and that had me invested for, a good hour or two to, find out what actually happened. But bottom line, you can't act like that. And it's just, it takes away a lot from his career, and it takes away something from Tampa Bay if they end up going out early in the playoffs.
Dario,
yeah.
Yeah, no, Antonio Brown, it's really like unfortunate what we're hearing. I do think there's some serious mental health issues going on with him. And, like, look, it's entertaining in a sense where we're watching it as just football fans, but I think there's actually a serious thing going on with him. And he's not willing. I don't know whether it's he needs help or something like that. I do think that he shouldn't continue on with his career anymore. I think this should be the
Yeah,
final.
that
Yeah.
NFL career is done. I mean, no
He's done.
NFL team picking him up. I mean, unless Jerry Jones is crazy enough, but I think even he has advisors now that warn him against moves like that. We've seen maybe Johnny Evans that we've seen definitely
Yeah.
players that could have been on the Cowboys with that kind of history. But yeah, Antonio Brown's career in the NFL is done.
And the thing is like it does make me think. Like I even remember when he was playing for Tampa, and when he put on the Patriots. Every time when you thought about Antonio Brown, you weren't thinking about how you thought about him in Pittsburgh, where it was just one of the best receivers. And like, don't get me wrong, I think like as you guys said, I do think he's in the conversation of one of the best receivers we've seen. But the thing about him is that I think his attitude, and as I think Matthew or both of you mentioned, his attitude kind of influenced how you look at him, his reputation as a player. You don't think about him as this incredible player who's won a Super Bowl with Tampa Bay. You think about his off-field antics, and unfortunately, that has cost him his how we look at him and the longevity of his career. And in hindsight, I mean, you could say that there's been issues going around with him that we haven't been able to, get the full story of, including this one. We don't know the full story here. We just know that Bruce Arians didn't have a choice but to cut him off the team. Is NFL's NFL career's done? I think it's, as you guys said, it's safe to say it's really unfortunate. I do hope that he gets some serious help for what's going on with him, because it does seem like that he's going through something that he's not going to talk, and he's responding in a very unprofessional like manner, and it feels almost involuntary for him. And we'll have to see, but it's unfortunate to say the least what's going on with him.
I mean, here's the thing. If it is CT, which honestly, I think everyone kind of leaning towards the possibility.
Yeah, that's where we go. Just in NFL terms.
Because
now, in that kind of circle.
Of course, we never know, because CT obviously they can't diagnose with it until after you pass.
I mean, we all know most NFL players have some form of CT.
Yeah.
I mean, we're just looking, how severe is and kind of. We've seen in recent history, Aaron Hernandez, how young he was, when his kind of life and his mind started to really turn. And I mean, obviously, that is a risk of playing in the NFL, and that's the dangers that not only, happen, when you're on the field, but off the field, you just don't know who you can hurt. But, it's not really Antonio Brown's hurting people. It's just his actions are like of a child or of, a teenager. And, he has this platform, and he has, millions of followers, and, he is a household name now. So that's almost taken out of perspective when you look at the way he's behaving and kind of the way he's going out, because it's not an NFL problem anymore. This is not, the NFL has to worry about this. Now this is, his close friends and family have to, look after him and, make sure he's not doing anything crazy to put, his life or someone else's life in jeopardy.
I'm agree with you.
A little bit of a somber, we kind of took that a little bit, sadder than I wanted to, but it should be a crazy week, wildcard weekend. So all NFL fans, go out there. It's going to be a cold winter in Canada. It'll be a cold weekend. So sit home, get some nice, warm hot chocolate, maybe, a nice pizza, some nachos, sit down, relax, watch some good NFL football this week. It's sure to continue for the entirety of the playoffs. And Matthew and I for sure will be bringing you guys recaps every week, and Dario will probably get him on for maybe one or two more. Definitely for the Super Bowl podcast, we'll have Dario on, maybe with
Depends on how long the Patriots are there.
Yeah, maybe. But we'll definitely look to get maybe a panel for a fourth or fifth guest on here for the Super Bowl podcast. But for now, thank you guys for listening. It's been a pleasure, and we'll see you guys next time.